Blood stained the antique Persian rug, gleaming dark under the shattered remains of a crystal decanter. That was the standard welcome at the Falcone estate. Marco Falcone was a monster, wrapped in a tailored suit, terrorizing New Jersey's underworld. No one dared cross him, until a heavyset maid with zero survival instincts walked straight into his crosshairs. The Falcone estate sat behind towering iron gates, less a home than a fortress, governed by blood loyalty and Marco's absolute, terrifying authority. At 35, Marco was undisputed head of the Falcone syndicate, a man chiseled from marble and ice. With a temper so notoriously violent, his own men hesitated before delivering bad news. Over the previous 3 months, the house had burned through 11 different maids. Some quit in tears. Others fled in the dead of night, leaving belongings behind, just to escape the tension. Then came Odessa Marsh. Odessa was 29, severely overweight, and completely devoid of the nervous energy that usually characterized the estate's staff. She was a big woman, soft and round, in a world that demanded everyone be sharp and lethal. Life had never afforded her the luxury of being delicate. Raising a financially reckless younger brother, juggling 3 jobs to keep the heat running in her cramped apartment, had forged a core of iron beneath her soft exterior. When the desperate head housekeeper offered triple the standard rate to clean the Don's private wing, Odessa didn't hesitate. She didn't care if Marco Falcone was the devil himself. The devil's money paid overdue bills. Her 3rd day coincided with one of the worst crises the family had faced in a decade. A shipment at the port had been intercepted by the rival Salerno family. A catastrophic loss, orchestrated by a man called the Viper. The mansion vibrated with Marco's wrath. From the study, the sound of breaking glass and roaring echoed through the corridor. "Get out!" Marco's voice was a snarl that rattled the paintings. "If I don't have an answer by midnight, someone's head is on my desk." 3 enforcers scrambled out, nearly colliding with Odessa, who was pushing a heavy cleaning cart down the hall. "Are you crazy, sweetheart?" One of them hissed. "Turn the cart around. He'll snap your neck for breathing too loud." "Is he done breaking things?" Odessa asked, impassive. "What? If he's done breaking things, I need to sweep. I go off the clock in 20 minutes. Without waiting, she gripped her broom and pushed through the heavy doors. The study was a disaster. Papers scattered like snow, a shattered vase by the fireplace, the sharp scent of spilled whiskey. In the center stood Marco, breathing hard, tie discarded, shirt torn open to reveal an old jagged scar. His eyes, black with fury, snapped toward the doorway, expecting her to squeak and run like all the others. Odessa didn't run. She took in the mess, let out a long, exhausted sigh, and walked in. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Marco growled, stepping toward her. "My job." She walked to the fireplace and began sweeping shattered porcelain. He stalked toward her, towering over her crouching form. "I didn't call for a maid. Get out before I make you regret it." She straightened up, joints popping. She was a large woman, and when she stood to her full height, she took up her own space. She looked him dead in the eye. "Mr. Falcone, you have broken glass all over an antique rug. If you walk on it, you'll grind the shards into the fibers, and I will spend 3 hours on my knees with tweezers, getting them out. I am not doing that. Kindly step left." Marco blinked. No one in his reign had ever told him what to do, least of all a maid who looked at him with mild bureaucratic annoyance instead of terror. He stepped left. "Thank you." She went back to sweeping. "You aren't afraid of me," Marco said. "Not a question. Should I be? I could kill you right now, and no one would ever find your body. He leaned on the desk, bringing his face close to hers, testing her. Odessa didn't flinch. With all due respect, Mr. Falcone, I ride the bus through the industrial district at 2 in the morning. I've had a gun pulled on me for $20. You're just a guy who broke his own vase because he was having a bad day. Now please lift your arms. You're leaning in the whiskey. He stared at her, and then a low, dark chuckle rumbled in his chest, growing into a genuine laugh that echoed strangely through the tense room. He lifted his arms. What's your name? Odessa. Well, Odessa. He watched her with new curiosity. You're the first interesting thing to happen in this house, in a long time. Over the following weeks, a strange, unspoken dynamic settled over the estate. Odessa became the untouchable anomaly, the only staff member permitted to enter his study unannounced, dusting bookshelves and swapping cold espresso for hot, while he screamed over territory disputes with his capos. He never yelled when she was in the room. Not everyone found it amusing. Nico Belandi, Marco's second-in-command, despised her. Vain, ambitious, cruel. I don't get it, boss, Nico sneered one afternoon in the billiards room. Why keep her around? There are plenty of girls who look better in a uniform and know how to keep their mouths shut. Marco froze mid-shot. The room's temperature plummeted. He walked over, grabbed Nico by the throat, and slammed him against the wall. You will speak of Odessa with respect. She has more courage in her pinky finger than you have in your whole body. If I hear you disrespect her again, I will cut your tongue out and feed it to my dogs. Understood? Nico nodded frantically. Marco dropped him and walked out, leaving behind a festering, dangerous hatred. Nico had been secretly feeding information to the Salerno family, plotting to remove Marco and claim the throne. He needed Marco dead, but the Don's security was impenetrable. Except for Odessa. He hired investigators and found her weakness fast. Her younger brother, Cole, a degenerate gambler with a $40,000 debt in an underground poker ring run by Nico's associates. On a rainy afternoon, as Odessa carried linens toward the laundry room, Nico cornered her in a dim service hallway, 2 enforcers blocking the exits. Hello, Odessa. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Belandi, excuse me, I have work to do. We need to talk about Cole. He pulled a small, clear vial from his jacket. He owes my friends a lot of money. They're going to collect tonight, one way or another. But I can make it go away. What do you want? He pressed the vial into her trembling hand. The Don takes his espresso at 4. You make it. Empty this in. Tasteless. Odorless. He'll just go to sleep, and his heart will stop. A tragedy. No. She tried to shove it back. I'm not a killer. He grabbed her wrist hard. You do it, or I make a call, and Cole goes in the river. Your choice, sweetheart. The Mafia boss who doesn't care about you, or your brother's life. He let go, smoothed his lapels, and walked away, leaving Odessa alone, with the poison shaking in her hand. At 3:55, she stood in the kitchen, her hands trembling so badly she could barely hold the tray. In her apron pocket, the vial felt like an anvil. She closed her eyes, tears leaking down. Cole was reckless, but he was her family. But when she thought of Marco, the terrifying man who had never once mocked her size, who'd demanded respect for her from his own men, her stomach twisted into knots. At exactly 4, she knocked. Come in. Marco sat behind his desk, rubbing his temples. The hard lines of his face softened when he saw her. Odessa, right on time. She set the tray down, legs like lead. He reached for the cup. Before his fingers touched the porcelain, She slapped her hand over it. He frowned. "What are you doing?" She was crying now, pulling the vial from her pocket, slamming it down beside the cup. "Don't drink that." His posture went rigid, eyes turning cold and calculating. "What is this?" "It's poison." Her shoulders shook. "Nico cornered me in the hall. My brother owes $40,000 to gamblers. He said if I didn't put it in your espresso, they'd kill Cole tonight. I couldn't do it. I'm so sorry. Please, you can kill me, but don't let them hurt my brother." Marco sat perfectly still. The silence was absolute, broken only by her weeping. He looked at the vial, at how close he'd come to dying, at this terrified woman who had every reason to save her own blood and had chosen him instead. He stood and walked around the desk. She braced for the blow. Instead, two large, warm hands gripped her shoulders gently. "Look at me." She forced her eyes open. "You saved my life." His voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Your brother's debt is gone. As of this second, Cole is under my protection. No one touches him." She let out a ragged sob of relief. Marco's expression hardened as he looked toward the door, the beast inside him wide awake. "Dry your tears," he said quietly, already spinning a web of vengeance. "Stay here. Lock the door behind me. I have to have a word with Nico." Her trembling hands fumbled with the brass lock. Outside, silence hung over the estate for exactly 3 minutes. Then all hell broke loose. Marco's footsteps were deliberately heavy on the marble. He didn't run. He stalked. He found Nico in the grand foyer, whispering into a burner phone. "Boss." Nico dropped the phone into his jacket. "I thought you were taking your afternoon coffee." Slight change of plans. From the mezzanine, 2 of Marco's loyal enforcers stepped into view, weapons already drawn. Nico's bought men reached for their holsters, and the foyer erupted into deafening crossfire. Marco didn't flinch as a bullet shattered a chandelier above him, glass raining down like diamonds. He closed the distance to Nico with terrifying grace, disarming him with a brutal strike to the wrist, the crack of bone audible over the gunfire. He drove Nico to his knees, pressing his own gun against Nico's forehead. "You underestimated my house, Nico. You thought her weight made her slow, that her background made her weak. She has more loyalty in her blood than you'll ever comprehend. Marco, please. The Salernos made me. You chose your fate." He pulled the trigger. Silence slammed back into the estate. Marco stepped over the bodies, wiped a smear of blood from his cheek, and walked back to the study. Inside, Odessa was huddled on the floor, weeping. When the lock clicked and the door swung open, she flinched. "It's over," he said softly, closing the door behind him. His shirt was torn, splattered with dark red. She scrambled up, her caretaking instincts overriding her fear. "You're hurt." "It's not mine." But he let her guide him to the sofa. She rushed to her cart, retrieved a clean towel, wetted it, and knelt beside him, wiping the blood and grime from his face and neck with surprisingly gentle hands. He watched her, the furrow of her brow, the complete lack of pretense in her movements. She wasn't trying to seduce him. She was simply caring for him. "Why didn't you run?" he asked. "You could have poisoned me, grabbed Cole and fled." She paused, damp towel hovering. "Because you're a terrifying man, Mr. Falcone. But you've never been cruel to me. In a world that constantly tells me I take up too much space, you treated me like a human being. I couldn't repay that with murder." He reached up, wrapping his hand around her wrist, pulling her closer. "You are not just a maid anymore, Odessa. You belong to me now. I will protect you. I will protect Cole, and anyone who looks at you with anything less than reverence will answer to me." 6 months later, the estate had transformed, and so had its hierarchy. Odessa Marsh no longer pushed a cleaning cart. She was the undisputed queen of the Falcone syndicate. Marco had paid Cole's debts and placed him in a monitored, legitimate role at one of the family's warehouses, far from any card table. Marco refused to let Odessa shrink herself for anyone. When designers suggested slimming black and restrictive tailoring, he threw them out of the house. Instead, he commissioned custom couture that celebrated her size, flowing emerald silk gowns that draped over her hips and shoulders, radiating quiet, immovable power. But she wasn't just a protected trophy. Her years of stretching pennies and dodging debt collectors had given her a razor-sharp mind for financial anomalies, and she began quietly reviewing Marco's ledgers. The real test came during a sit-down with Salvatore Salerno, the rival boss behind Nico's failed coup, in the private dining room of a heavily guarded restaurant in the city. Marco sat at the head of the table, radiating tension. Beside him, Odessa sipped sparkling water, unbothered. Salvatore smirked at her. "I got to admit, Marco, when I heard you took a new woman, I expected a supermodel. What are you paying her in pastries?" The Falcone guards drew their weapons instantly, safeties clicking off. Marco's hand moved toward his jacket. Odessa placed a soft hand over his forearm, stopping him. She didn't blush. She smiled, chilling and terrifying, a smile she'd learned from the Don himself. "Mr. Salerno, I might enjoy a good pastry, but you seem to enjoy embezzling from your own offshore accounts, specifically the Shell Corporation, under your mistress's maiden name. I found it interesting. Your capos are taking pay cuts while you funnel $3 million a quarter into a private fund." Salvatore's smug grin vanished, color draining from his face, as his own men exchanged suspicious glances. "You're lying." She slid a thick manila folder across the table. Bank statements, wire logs, photographs. When you spend your whole life being overlooked because of how you look, you learn how to watch people very closely. You should secure your servers. Now Marco and I are going to propose a new territory division, and you're going to sign it. Or I hand these files to your underboss and let your own men tear you apart. Salvatore stared at the folder, utterly defeated by a woman he'd dismissed seconds earlier. He signed without another word. That night, back in their master suite, Marco poured 2 glasses of red wine and sank to his knees before Odessa, sitting on the edge of the bed, a position the feared Don Falcone took for no one else on earth. "You were magnificent today." He kissed the soft skin of her stomach. "You terrified them. I learned from the best. I told you," he said, dark eyes shining up at her. "You're not afraid of monsters." "No." She ran her fingers through his hair. "I just know exactly how to tame them." They had conquered the underworld, not with standard cruelty, but with an alliance forged in the ashes of betrayal. Odessa had walked into a house of death, armed with nothing but a dustpan and an iron will, and she had claimed the heart of its king, proving true power is an immovable force, no matter what shape it takes. Did this thrilling Mafia romance keep you on the edge of your seat? If this story of unexpected power and love moved you, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more.